Everyone. Today I'm going to talk about monitoring and alerting. So, as a system admin and a DevOps engineer, something that is very much important is monitoring and alerting. When we search on Google, this is what Google's hit me up. Monitoring is a discipline or a practice that helps IT professional to escape short-term uh, reactive nature. Just imagine that your application is down and you need to be alerted, or you just want to monitor if the application is running smoothly or not. That's what monitoring and alerting was. Why do we need monitoring and alerting? So just imagine you are partying. This looks like someone's betting, but yeah, you are just partying and you are the sole administrator of your application. It's almost 8, 9 o'clock, so you are not, you are away from your keyboard, away from your computer, and all of a sudden some permission error occurs on your application and it's down. Now, at that point, it's a prime time. A lot of people are using your application, and every single minute cost you almost, I don't know how many, but a lot of users. In such situations, what are you gonna do? How would you even get an alert? Or you would know that your application is down. Just imagine that you are sleeping, and now, for example, I'm from India, and my user base is from US, and I'm sleeping right now, and my application goes down. Maybe my disk space gets filled up totally, and uh, uh, I'm losing users every single minute in US just because I'm sleeping and I'm not getting alerted. So we have a solution for this. A lot of engineers has worked on it, and this is not a new thing. A lot of years have been passed, and people are working and created some beautiful applications to monitor and alert our applications, our cloud applications, or whatever applications we are running. So before we jump into the technology stack we choose on or our strategy, what our monitoring and alerting should be, we should think of these options, or I would say go throughout these points like how my application is deployed. So either it's deployed on a VM or directly on bare metal. Either we are using Docker for containerization so that we could use microservices and reduce single point of failures, or we are using Kubernetes that makes our application running very smooth and probably reduces the headache of monitoring and alerting. Um, Second, what are the components of the application? For example, you create an application, say to a calculator application, which calculates a lot of complex uh, equations, do arithmetic operations, but complex, scientist levels. And you are storing some kind of data. So you have a database, you are allowing user to log in. You have a database, you started to cache data, for example, for uh, maybe a specific equation, the answer always comes same, and you decided to store it in a cache memory, and for that you used Redis. You have a database of Postgres, whatever, MySQL, NoSQL, it's on you. Your application is developed on Node.js. It's have a front end on React. It has a back end on maybe Ruby on Rails or Flask or Django, whatever it is. And there are a lot of components the application is using. So first of all, you need to understand what are my components. What am I using? That you need to investigate once your application is up is the early symptoms. For example, uh, your application is too much consumes too much of memory. Memory in the sense physical memory, the secondary memory we are talking about, and maybe the logs are too much specific. It's helpful, but it's using a lot of memory, and as there are a lot of requests coming up, logs are getting more and more, and the files are getting bigger and bigger, and slowly your application gets filled up. And just imagine that your application logs, just your whole server goes down because of log files couldn't write into a file. In that situation, you want an alert. Maybe, for example, the disk space is filled 80%, and you want at that time to be alerted so that you can maybe increase the disk space or delete old log that are not necessary or something like that. So in that situation, you have to find all the early symptoms that may trigger a failure or that may break down your whole application. Maybe a high usage on CPU, or maybe there are some zombie processes running, or there's a lot of things that you could think right now, investigate on your application. And fourthly, like what kind of metrics you need. So that's an important thing. And what would be the exporters that are using? For example, as I said, you are building an application, for example, which runs on Ruby on Rails, which is at the back end. The front end is on Vue.js. It has a database running on Postgres and a cache memory running on Redis. You have these four components. So you will need at least four metrics. A matrix that would provide all the requests that are getting generated uh, while hitting the front end. If any error that might occur in front end should be reported and send it back to you, alerted to you that yeah, something got wrong that wasn't expected. Database replication, for example, you have an HA cluster set it up. You have one primary database, or you could say yeah, a primary database and secondary database, and secondary is replicating to the primary so that in case primary goes down, secondary can be promoted to primary. So in that case, for example, there's some replication delay, maybe due to internet, or maybe your replication server is going slow. In that case, you need to be notified that my replication is not working fast and I have to fix that. So then you have to jump into Postgres exporter. You want metrics regarding Redis, you want a Redis exporter. So there are a lot of stuffs. So this is something that you should first investigate before choosing any strategy. On the next slide, we'll move on. What are the technology stacks that we could choose? So the first one is Prometheus Alert Manager and Grafana stack. This is, I would say, this is open source first of all. So if you are a startup, you have an application, maybe you're not earning through it, just your project, and you really need alerting for that, monitoring for that, because you have a user and you don't want them to lose. Prometheus Alert Manager in Grafana is must. It's I would say the standard everyone is using right now. And alert managers, push gateways, these are just a bundle in Prometheus. Grafana is something which makes your metrics look more beautiful. There are charts, displays that help you monitor your application, understand what is happening better. InfluxDB is, I would say, a competition or an alternative to Prometheus. Again, InfluxDB is, well, it may look the same, but they both are totally different. Prometheus is pull-based metric system, while InfluxDB is push-based metric system. Once we start working on Prometheus, you will understand what is pull-based and what is push-based. Um, I'll link documentation to all these the documentation for Prometheus. Prometheus is kind of very easy, and as I said, it's a part of Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Only three or four projects are right now in this, and uh, it's pretty amazing. It's written on Go. It's very efficient. They are time series databases on which you could run queries, get yourself alerted. You can monitor stuff and a lot of things. Same is something what InfluxDB does, but here it doesn't pull metrics. You have to push the metrics into InfluxDB. It's just the same. They also have a bundle uh, working for every single infrastructure that you are thinking, maybe on Kubernetes or Docker or wherever it is, cloud that is AWS and Google and all. And they have their alerting system. I've never worked on this, so I can't say a lot about it. Uh, let's go talk about the third VMware Wavefront. So this is a Tanzu project that they have, and this is a paid, I think so. This is something that you need to buy. It's an enterprise application. Obviously, if it's an enterprise application, it would be good. Um, uh, it's just the same. You have to provide the metrics. You'll get alerted. You get um, all that stuff that is required. And it works for these are the companies that are using it right now. So if you are a startup, you are working for a startup, maybe this is not the choice you may go for, but yeah. Um, let's talk about Splunk. So these three were something we could call as metric collector and alerters. But Splunk, Nagios, these both work a little bit different. So what Splunk does is it collects the data, or the data here is logs and not the metrics. So for example, you have as I said, you have an application on Ruby or on Rails, and it's generating some logs, maybe application.log in certain file, and it has all the data like a user logged in, authenticated, or a user hit 500 error, or maybe uh, there was no error and 200 HTTP code was written. These logs are getting generated, and you need to analyze through these logs. Then Splunk is something that you could use. Splunk can be used for alerting, for messaging and all. Splunk will check the logs. You can create a query inside it. For example, maybe you can check if there are more than, let's say, 10, 500 returns, HTTP code returns on your application, and you want to get alerted. There's something wrong going on your server, because 500 is something that your server couldn't handle. So in that case, you want to get alert, and you can get it very easily through logs. So Splunk is something that you could work on. And similarly is Nagios. Nagios is Linux monitoring through logs, server monitoring. It's a bit old, and it's being used by a lot of companies. So these are some alternatives that you could choose. Technology stack you could go through. Prometheus Alert Management and Grafana is something which is easy, and it doesn't need uh, actually you do not need money to buy these stuff. These are not some enterprise grade application. These are open source, so you could also contribute into it. So for this whole tutorial, we're going to work on this technology stack. Prometheus, which again is a pull-based metric time series database, and you could create queries now. Prometheus doesn't has SQL, but it has something known as PromQL, that is Prometheus query language. Using that, you could create alerts, and then what is this push gateway? So as we talked about InfluxDB, it's a push-based metrics. Sometimes it happens like you cannot have an exporter for something, for example, specifically to your application, maybe. As I said, like we were using Splunk to get alerted for 500 HTTP code. But you can't use Splunk because now it's an enterprise grade application. You have to buy it and all that stuff. So you write a script which is constantly checking the log files, and it's counting the number of times 500 was occurred. And for example, in certain period of time, maybe in 2 minutes, it saw that 500 occurred more than 20 times. And now there's some serious trouble going on in your application and you want to get alerted. You can write a script, and you could connect Prometheus uh, via REST API. So Prometheus gives a bunch of REST APIs. Prometheus scripts can be written on a variety of languages, Python, JavaScript. There are a lot of them. It's on you which you choose. So in that case, just like these metrics, the exporters are not provided. You go for push gateway. Alert manager is nothing but it manages the alert. So Prometheus creates an alert. Push gateway is nothing but it provides metrics uh, wherein we need to push metrics onto Prometheus. And for Alert Manager, again, Alert Manager alerts you. So whenever Prometheus is running a Prometheus query and it executes, it send that query to Alert Manager. It's Alert Manager's job to alert you either through Slack, either through Microsoft Teams, either through mail, either through PagerDuty, or maybe call you. It's based on how you configure it. So Alert Manager's job is just to alert you. Prometheus' job is to collect the metrics and run the query every the time period that you have given it, and according to that, decide whether to alert manager or not. Now, what's Grafana? Grafana is, I can show you. Grafana creates this amazing graphs, charts to visualize your metrics. So, for example, maybe just see this graph. So, just imagine this is something which is showing the CPU consumption, and maybe at daily 2 to 3 o'clock, you see a big spike. That's when you see that your application is being used a lot, or the CPU memory consumption goes high, and that's the point when you want your application to be more efficient, maybe run more uh, sidekick jobs, or what do you say it, asynchronous jobs to finish tasks rather than using your CPU. So this will help you a lot in monitoring your data. It doesn't help you in alerting, but after maybe an alert is triggered, it will help you to debug or investigate what happened wrong. So let's get started with our next tutorial on Prometheus.